The South African Post Office has been put under provisional liquidation. Essentially, if it goes under final liquidation, it means the South African Post Office will close down and it will no longer exist, essentially. South African Post Office has close to 1,300 branches today and is responsible for paying about 7 million beneficiaries their grants every month. In South Africa, we used to have 19 million with the 350 Rand social relief for distress grant. We've now got grant recipients of about 30 million people, and 7 million of them are paid by the South African Post Office. In the last couple of years, the South African Post Office has not been paying rent to the landlords of its close to 1,300 branches. It's got creditors and owes creditors over 4.4 billion Rand. It also owes SARS, the tax man, millions of rands because as much as they're paying salaries to their over 10,000 workers, they're not paying the tax component. Not only are they not paying the tax component, but they haven't been paying their pension savings. They haven't been paying for their medical aid. They haven't been paying for the unemployment insurance benefit, the UIF. It's a mess. According to some records, the South African Post Office has been reporting financial losses for the last 15 consecutive years. In the last year, in 2022, they recorded 2.2 billion Rand in losses. And if you look at their balance sheet, for those people that understand the assets and liabilities, their liabilities exceed their assets by over 4 billion Rand. So one of the creditors that had enough, they took it to the High Court in Pretoria and they successfully got the South African Post Office to be under provisional liquidation, which means the people that are entrusted to look through that process is going to try and see if there's any creditors that can be paid or if they completely need to collapse the South African Post Office. Over 10,000 people might lose their jobs. They're currently looking to retrench about 3,000 people. They wanted to retrench 6,000, but it's gone down to 3,000 now. Over 15 years of losses, another failure, another addition to the woeful legacy of the ANC. On top of this year's 16 years of load shedding, what's happening at Eskom with its maybe 400 billion Rand worth of debt. If you look at what's happened with Denel, if you look at the fact that South African Airways has been sold, you look at what's currently happening with Transnet, which is also falling apart. The current Minister of State-owned enterprises, Provisional, never has to explain anything. He's bulletproof. If you look at everyone else that's involved at the highest levels, nothing's happening. South African Post Office recently got a black female CEO, and I remember engaging with her, and she said they have really great plans of turning it around. But I don't buy into that, unfortunately. The sad thing for me is that I know that our politicians have got share portfolios where their wealth sits. And their share portfolios are invested in the private alternatives to some of our public infrastructure. Could be healthcare, where our medical aid, where private clinics, private hospitals, they have shares in those. They want those to grow. So they kind of need the public infrastructure to fall apart. Same thing happens with private schooling versus public schooling, where their kids go to private schools and they have shares in some of the private schooling ventures out there. You can imagine the same with some of these postal services. Postnet is on the rise. They are constantly growing. You see now with the PEP, that the PEP Paxi product, a lot of people are shipping their goods now via PEP. Aeromax, I think at Pick and Pay and other spaces as well. DSV and some of the innovations where people are putting these blocks where you just put something in a post box, whether it's at a fuel station, at a store, and people go and pick it up on the other side. It almost looks like it's intentional. One of the questions I did ask the current CEO was, why did you guys not force all beneficiaries of SASSA grants to receive their money from Post Bank? All 30 million would be today, because that would essentially be the biggest state bank that South Africa has. Why do you not force government employees to have a Post Bank account? If not that, you've got Time Bank under Patrice Motsepe. Why not partner with them so that Time Bank operates through the post office? Why are you not partnering with PEP Paxi so that it also works with the South African Post Office? But you realize that it's almost intentional that they need the post office to collapse. People argue that it's because of the innovations, because people use email, because people use technology. No one sends letters anymore. But as I said, the private alternatives seem to be doing really well. And unfortunately, your politicians obviously have shares in those spaces. It's tragic what's happening with the South African Post Office, and it's probably going to get worse with more state-owned enterprises. More people are going to lose their jobs. More people are going to need grants and depend on the government. Again, the legacy of the ANC. Tragic, but here we are now. And people are still going to vote for the ANC next year. And the media, the mainstream media, is still protecting Cyril Ramaphosa, the president, and is still protecting Pravin Gordhan, who is head of state-owned enterprises. Paying you all the black pen.